Hi friends! Today's tutorial is on the humble granny square. This tutorial is for absolute beginners or for people who have given them a go before and would like a refresh. This is my method of making the perfect granny square. Let's get started. So today we're going to learn how to make a very simple basic granny square for beginners. You can make them in plain colours, or you can alternate the colours to make really beautiful projects. Granny squares can be used for so many different things. I'll do a little montage of what they can be used for. But once you've mastered this, there are so many projects you can go ahead and do. I highly recommend, as a beginner, to learn the granny square. So let's get started. So the things you're going to need to start, I would recommend a double knit yarn. It's not too thick, not too thin, just right to work with. My favourite brand is Stylecraft. They have hundreds of colours. This is a acrylic yarn and it's cheap, so great for beginning on. You have all your details on the back of the label, the size of hook you need to use, your washing instructions. So once you've chosen your colour, you can get your instructions from the back of the yarn. So this is a double knit. Also, you could try with an Aran. Sorry, it's all falling apart, this ball. But this is an Aran weight yarn, so it's slightly thicker. If I show you the two next to each other, it's thicker and may actually be a little easier to try if you're finding it tricky. Try a slightly thicker yarn, and again this has all the details on the back. So I recommend Stylecraft if you're in the UK, but any brand of cheap acrylic yarn to start with is where I would go. Next, you're going to need your equipment. So you want your crochet hook. This is my ultimate favourite crochet hook. I'm sure once you've had a go with some crochet hooks, you will choose your favourite. This one's mine. I love it. You will need a needle with a nice large hole in it, yarn needle, and some scissors. I have these snips, but any type of scissors will do. And that's really it. I have printed off a chart so I can show you as I go, but you absolutely don't need to use a chart. I just wanted to include it in the tutorial as a little extra. And for my balls of yarn, I always wind them into balls. You don't have to do this at all, but it's become a 20-year habit of mine. I do it with all of my yarn, and then I can pop it in a bowl and it unravels really easily for me. So the very first thing we need to do is a slip knot. The way I do my slip knot is wrap it around my finger twice, take it off so you've got a loop, and then just pull through. And there you have a slip knot, which you can tighten or loosen. Pop your hook in, and you have your very first slip knot. I'll do that one more time, as this tutorial is for beginners. Wrap it round your fingers, through, and tighten, like so. Next, I'm going to show you my method. There are other methods, but this, like I said, I've been crocheting for 20 years, and this has always been my favourite method, and I find it creates the neatest, tidiest squares that don't twist as they go round, and I shall explain that later. So I hold my yarn by winding it round my middle finger, hooking it over my forefinger, and then I'll just grip onto the tail end with these, just to give it a bit of stability. But I find this creates the perfect tension. so it helps to keep my stitches neat. This is the best hold for me. There are other methods. You may want to just experiment with what feels right for you, but for me this is the perfect hold. And I also am a pen holder. Some people hold their crochet hooks like this. I hold mine like this. This is why I like a thin hook, because for my grip this one's perfect. You might find if you grip it like this you prefer one with a larger handle, a more ergonomic one. For me this one's just right. I feel like Goldilocks. It's just right. Okay, so now we're going to chain 5. To chain, you yarn over your hook and you pull it through your first loop, and that has created your first chain. So we're going to do 5 of these. So that's 1, yarn over, through, 2, yarn over, through, 3, 4, 5. So now you have your first chain of 5. We're going to now create a circle. So this is going in to the very first loop you've created. You've created a little circle and you have 2 loops on your hook. You're now going to pull through, yarn over and pull through both of those loops. So you now have 1 loop on your hook and a little circle. Some people do a magic circle. That's absolutely fine. I prefer not to. I find once you weave in your ends you can close the hole nicely, and I feel like this is more secure. So it's entire, again, personal preference. I prefer to use the chain. So now we have our first loop. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and this is going to be classed as our very first stitch. We're now going to do treble crochet, or which is UK terms, or double crochet in US terms. So we yarn over, we put it through the center of our circle, yarn over again and pull it back through. We now have 3 loops on our hook. We yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops. You now have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the last 2. So you're left with 1 loop on your hook. You have your first chain, which is the first stitch, and you have your first treble or double crochet, depending on where you're from. I'm going to use UK terms from now on, but I will keep explaining that. So now we need another one because these are coming in a cluster of 3. So we need to do that again. Yarn over, through the first 2, through the next 2. And now you have your first cluster of 3. We've got our first 3, we're going to just chain 1. And now we're going to create our next 3. So we need 4 clusters of 3 in total to create our square. So you can see now this one has a gap because of the chain we created. This is going to end up being our corner. So we have 1, yarn over, through the 2, through the 2. So that's 2 stitches. Yarn over, through the circle, 3 loops on the hook, through 2, through 2. So now we have our second cluster of 3. So there should be 6 stitches in total, excluding the chain. We're going to chain 1 and make another cluster of 3. Yarn over, through the center, 3 loops on the hook, pull through 2, 2 loops on the hook, pull through both. And again we have the gap between each cluster of 3, which is going to be our corners. So I shall do 2 more to turn that into 3. Yarn over. So now we have 1, 2, 3 groups of 3 clusters. Chain 1 again because we need 4 as this is going to be a square. Yarn over, through, yarn over, through 2. Okay, so now we've made it to the end of our round. We need to chain 1 and we are going to stitch into the top of our first chain, which is our first stitch. I always find it fiddly to get into there, but you can. Give it a little wiggle. So you've gone through, you have 2 loops on your hook. Pull this loop through that one. So it's not a yarn over, you're actually just, this is called a slip stitch. So you pull the loop through the other one and you end up with 1 loop and your first round. So now we are working on our next round. Here we have it shown, we're going to chain 3. So that's what I'm going to do here. We're going to chain 3, 2, 3. Now this is where some people differ. I will show you what I do. Like I said, I feel like this makes the neatest squares. I am now going to turn my work, because I find if you continue round and round and round, always in the same direction, your square can twist and end up with the points sort of curving round. This way it makes it straight on every corner, and I much prefer that look. It's also easier to turn it into bags or blankets if they are perfectly square. So we turn our work on each row. Now then, we're going back into the first gap space, corner space that we have created here. So we yarn over. It's a treble crochet UK or double crochet US for the entire project. So we're doing a cluster of 3. Again, like on the first round, our chain counts as a first stitch. Now for each corner, you're going to want to do 2 of these, but for the very first corner, we're going to start with 1. And then we don't chain at the end of this one. We yarn over and we go into our next corner. Do our treble, 1, 2, 3. And because this is a corner, we need to chain 1, and we're going to do another cluster of 3 into the same corner. 1, 2, 3. So let me recap what we've done here. We started here, and what essentially we have done here is half a corner. We have now completed our first corner with the 3, the chain 1 and the 3 all into the same loop. We're going to do that again in this space. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then 3 into the same corner. As you can see, it's starting to become a square, So we have the 2 corners and the half a corner that we started at the beginning. Next space, 1, 2, 3. That's our first cluster. Chain 1, 1, 2, 3. Now we're back to the very first one we did. So we already have 1 cluster in there, so we need to add another one because each corner has 2 clusters. 1, 2, 3. And to complete it, we need to make our chain 1, and then we are going to slip stitch into the very first stitch you made with your chain. So that's where you pull through and then pull that loop through that loop. And you have your little square. Now you can even make projects with squares this size if you made lots of them and sewed them together. That can look really, really cute. But I'm going to continue round to show you how to make this bigger. So we're starting again in the corner. I always like to start in the corner. 1, 2, 3 chains. Turn your work. And now we're working into the corner. So again, we're only making half a corner on our first cluster. So we need 1, 2. So that gives you 3 if you include your chain. 1, 2, 3 into the corner. So this is half a corner, and then we do the other half when we get round to the other side. So now this row is slightly different to the one before. The one before was only corners because it was the small square. Now we have a space in between the corners, our side space. The side spaces only have 1 cluster of 3. So we're going to add 1 cluster of 3 into the side space. So you have your half a corner, your side space, and now we're making it to our first full corner. So we do a cluster of 3 trebles. We chain 1 and our next cluster of 3. Now we're back on our side, so we're going to do 3 into our side space. And then we're on to our next corner. So onto our next corner, we're going to need 2 clusters of 3 with the chain in between. 1, 2, 3, chain, 1, 2, 3. Back on a side piece. So we have just 3 inside. 1, 2, 3, back to a corner, then we have another side. I'm going to quickly whiz through that and then show you back to our half corner again. Okay, so I've done this corner with the 3, the chain, the 3, this side with the 3. Now we are back to our half corner that we've created here. We're going to chain treble 3 into there. 1, 2, 3. So now you have your 2 clusters in the corner. Chain 1, and we're going to do the slip stitch into the top stitch of your chain, first chain. So pull through 2 and pull that loop through. Now, as you can see on this row, we had 1 side space for each side. In this row, we now have 2 side spaces for each, and as they get bigger, your side spaces increase. You get 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is how it grows. So the corners always stay the same. You always have 4 corners with a cluster of 3, a chain, a cluster of 3, and then in the sides, as each row grows, your spaces between on the side grow too. So this time we have 2 on each side. So I'll show you once more. Chain 3, 2, 3, turn. You've got your space there. You're going to yarn over, 1, 2, and that has created your cluster of 3 because of your first chain. Half a corner first. Now we're going to do our cluster of 3 in this first space on the side. We have our second space on the side, so that's just a cluster of 3. I'm really sorry if you can hear my tummy rumbling. I'm quite hungry. Oops, I've gone wrong there. See, this is the joy of crochet. You see where I've gone wrong? There should be 3 loops on the hook and there's only 2. Just simply undo where you've gone wrong. Yarn over, 3 loops. That's right. So we have our 2 side spaces, each with 3 clusters in. Now we've made it to another corner. The corners are always the same. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then 3 back into the same space. And that's your corner. So I'm going to continue around until I get to my half corner again, and I'll just show you closing up one more time. So I've done my 2 corner, 2 sides, corner, 2 sides, and I am back round to my half a corner. It can look a little confusing when you look at that, but make sure it's the larger hole that you're going into. Yarn over, do a cluster of 3 trebles, going to chain 1, stitching into the first stitch of your chain, and then pull through. So this is our square so far. It's looking pretty good. Good job, guys. Okay, so I'm just going to teach you how to judge how big your square is. If you've forgotten how many rows you're doing, you start with your centre piece. You've got your centre square. You have 1 cluster, 2 clusters, 3 clusters, 4 clusters. So go up in diagonal and that will tell you that you have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. So you have completed 4 rows of a granny square. Well done, guys. It's looking fantastic. I'm going to continue around for another row just because I find, for me personally, when I'm learning, you need to really hammer it home to get it in your brain. So I'm going to do another row for you guys. So we have our slip stitched corner. We're going to chain 1, 2, 3. We're going to turn our work. You have your 1, 2, 3 cluster, 1, 2, 3 cluster. So we're going to put that into this space. So you've added your 2 trebles next to your chain, which creates the cluster of 3. We now have 1, 2, 3 spaces on the side. So each of these spaces is going to have a cluster of 3. Now you're back to a corner, so you're going to do a cluster of 3, a chain, and a cluster of 3. So that's 3, chain 1, 3, back into the corner. Now you're on the side again, you have 1, 2, 3. I'm going to speed this bit up so you can see me doing it, but at a faster speed. So I've made it back to my half corner. I'm going to do 3 into there. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1. Have your 2 on your hook. Just pull that one through. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Your very first official granny square. Now we need to take our scissors, our snips, cut a decent length tail for weaving in. And what I do now is just pull that through, and that seals it off and stops it from coming undone. Check it out, guys, you've made yourselves a granny square. So I'm going to take my needle, just weave in my ends. There's no perfect way of doing this, but I would just recommend going back and forth through all your stitches. It can't be seen, so just weave it in and out. If you just went straight down and snipped it off, it would probably come undone, so you want to just sort of go in and out. And then I'm going to do the same with the centre. This is where you can seal up your centre hole. You can thread it round, start to pull it tight. So I've gone all the way around that way. I'm going to go through the hole, through to the other side and go back the other way. Pulling nice and tight. Give that a little snip. And there you have it. A completed granny square, which is double-sided because we've turned our work. There's no right side or wrong side. And again, because we've turned our work, it has kept it square instead of twisted round. If you keep going around in the same direction each time, your corners can start to sort of do this, which doesn't look great. That's why I like to turn it. So there we have it. Oh, I really hope you enjoyed making this. Please go back, pause it, try again if you're having any troubles. Also, feel free to message me. I am open for giving advice and help individually to people. Absolutely, let's get you going with this crochet journey. Now you've mastered the art of the granny square, you can make multicoloured ones. So basically, when you get to your corner, you slip stitch closed, you weave in your ends as we did on the end of this one, and then you start in the corner again with your chain 3 but using a different colour, and you can create the most beautiful, interesting combinations of colours, and it is infinite. You can grow these to the size of a double bed if you wanted to. You just grow and grow, you just get more and more gaps in between around the edges. So go for it, guys. See what you can make. You can sew them together. It's different size, but you can sew them together and create a patchwork blanket. You can make bags, hats, all sorts of things. I shall do a little montage of inspiration.